Welcome, everyone, to the Increased Customer Trust and Personalization webinar, the latest installment of our Customer Channel webinar series, which is hosted by RIS and presented in partnership with SAP. I'm Tim Denman, Editor-in-Chief of RIS, and I thank you for joining us today. Today's digitally mature customers want retailers to know them personally and deliver targeted experiences and promotions that meet their unique needs. And as we all know, data is the key to creating this level of hyper-personalization. But what data sets are diamonds in the rough worthy of the mining effort and which are best left alone in the dirt? And once you have the right data points, how do you turn them into meaningful, actionable insights that can turn a shopper into a loyal brand enthusiast? With us today to explore the keys to building customer trust through personalization are SAP's David Gruehn and Randy Evins. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. I'm sure you're no stranger to past listeners of our Customer Channel series, but for those new to the discussion, why don't you both take a moment to introduce yourselves to the audience. David, why don't you go first?
Certainly. Hi, my name is Dave Gruehn. I've been in retail for about 30 years now, including about 6 years as a retail CIO, and I've spent the last 20-some years at two major technology companies, Microsoft and SAP, harnessing or helping retailers harness emerging technologies to differentiate their business with customer experience.
And I'm Randy Evins. Pleasure to be here. Been with SAP for 14 years, working exclusively in the food retailing business as an industry advisor. Prior to that, I spent 30 years in the grocery business working for companies like H-E-B in South Texas, American Stores, which is the parent of Jewel in Chicago, Acme, Philadelphia, and the former Lucky Stores in California.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Great to have you both here. We're going to dive into our conversation in just a second, but before we get started, we want to make sure this webinar is as interactive as possible and let those in attendance know that their feedback is important to us. You can use the web tools on your screen to send us questions or comments anytime during the webinar. It'll be a lot more fun and informative for all of us, and the more you contribute to questions and comments, the better ultimately the webinar will be. As we mentioned, today's webinar is part of the Customer Channel webinar series, which is based on RIS and SAP's Customer Channel project, which features a treasure trove of information on how to succeed in today's customer-centric marketplace. We encourage everyone to check out the channel via the link on the slide, or you can click on the Reports tab on the top of any page on risnews.com and find this. Speaking of the slides, today's slides will be available for download around 2 hours after the completion of today's broadcast. You could use the same link you used to get here today. The customer channel is broken up into 5 key pillars, and we'll be exploring 2 of them today, customer trust and personalization. So let's get right to it. The first question I have for the panel, customer experience is a huge focus area for retailers today. I hear the term hyper-personalization used often in the news and in my discussion with retailers and analysts. David and Randy, what is your position on this hot topic, and how can retailers best embrace it?
Well, I think I don't think anybody would argue with the fact that customer experience has been top of mind in the retail industry now for going on probably 3 or 4 years. And while I think retailers have been desperately trying to find ways to differentiate their business through customer experience for a long time, we're at a unique tipping point in terms of both the ability of retailers to connect personally with customers and the digital maturity or the digital savvy nature of customers today. I mean, it is truly retail's new battlefield for competition, with Gartner saying that 80% of organizations, and that's all businesses, but most certainly retailers, expect to compete mainly based on customer experience. Companies like Accenture saying that CX leaders are 24 to 26 times more likely to increase revenues, reduce costs, and grow strategically by focusing in this area. And Forrester saying, and this is pretty critical, 82% of buyers say they've switched providers for just 2 or 3 bad experiences, with more than 50% doing so in the last year alone. When you look at how high customers' expectations are today, I think it's obviously a critical focus for retailers. In fact, Oliver Wyman Group did a study about 4.5 years ago, and they predicted that businesses going forward would really compete, and I think, again, this is truly a fit for retail, in 6 primary business model areas. Product leadership, magnetic ecosystem, which is really what I think Amazon's perfected, go-to-choice intermediaries, customer experience, fulfillment intermediaries, and key location players. But just based on the nature of what the other 5 models entail. You almost have to have some type of niche benefit or, have already built up a strategic business strategy focus to compete in those areas. This leaves about 80% of all businesses, and again, most certainly retail, who are going to be competing on the battlefield of customer experience to try and win over customers. So what does all this have to do with what we're talking about today, customer trust and personalization? Well, my view, and I think this is shared by a lot of people, most certainly my colleague Randy, if customer experience is the future of success in retail, then personalization is the engine that's going to drive that success. Customer data is the fuel that's going to run that engine, and customer trust holds the keys to unlocking access to this critical customer data that's going to enable you to even begin to have a truly personalized relationship with your customers and cater experiences and promotions to them based on their individual unique needs. So SAP's really our go-to-market strategy is a strategy called the customer channel. It's really based on this evolution of customer experience maturity that's taken place now over the last 20 to 25 years. I mean, we began with multi-channel retail, which really came about, I think, primarily when the internet hit and more retailers realized, you know what, I got brick and mortar stores, but now I've got to have this very prominent presence in this new channel called online, and then, of course, mobile hit. But consumers very quickly realized that, you know what, I don't like the fact that I'm getting different experiences and prices are different, and you just think I'm different people in all these channels. So I think some of the more savvy retailers very quickly in the 2000s begin to realize, you know what, we've got to wrap our channels around the customer. And so the focus switched from being product focused and brand focused to focusing on customers, and the experiences migrated. They transformed from a transactional based experience to more of a seamless experience across these channels. Well, fast forward to today, and the leading edge retailers and the visionaries in the industry have now begun to realize that there's a transformation going on outside of omnichannel. It's a transformation from omnichannel to a single, almost myopic focus that's adaptive and predictive, all on the customer. And it's truly now an adaptive experience. So regardless of the channel that a customer may be touching you in, and these continue to expand almost every year, we are now trying to adapt to them, and this emerging technologies are enabling us to do that, being able to sense their moods and see them and have voice and facial recognition. And now the focus has gone from just focusing on the customer to predicting the customer's needs. And I think really at the end of the day, this transformation is going to be challenges for retailers in a couple of ways, because first and foremost, retailers, I think, are going to need to abandon their legacy approach to thinking in terms of retail channels and acknowledge that there's only one channel in retail now, and that's the customer. They want you to completely transform to their channel and be relevant on that channel, or you're going to run the risk of being irrelevant. So what's interesting about this transformation is that it's created a challenge for retailers. Randy, why don't you walk us through this gap that's existing today as we begin to see retailers transitioning from omnichannel to customer adaptive retailing?
So it's a great conversation, David. One thing I would also say to start with, if you think back 20 years, even before the multi-channel concept arrived, customer service, customer experience, anything that had to do with the customer was embedded in store operations. Your complete total reliance on the store to provide exceptional customer service created this kind of lingering gap, because you really didn't know for sure if the customer was getting what they wanted from you. I used, because I was in the business, Shapiro studies, customer intercepts, techniques to try to define how well am I doing how good is my customer experience. But what's happening today is with the onslaught of digital shopping, and the pandemic has certainly facilitated or accelerated that. There's two sides of the coin. There's the in-store experience and there's the online experience. And there's a significant gap between what retailer capabilities are like today and what the customer expectations are. A lot of retailers today are in that multi-channel world where they have a digital experience, but it's not related to the store experience at all. It's completely separate. Whereas the shoppers like, hey, I don't want two experiences with you. I want to have one methodology for shopping with you, and I don't care whether I'm in store with a device in my hand, or I'm at home, or I'm wherever. I want one experience. I want one relationship. I want to be able to understand your opinion of me and your reactions to my needs and desires and wants in a singular way, so I don't get two separate experiences. It's tough to do because a lot of times retailers have wrapped technologies around these processes. They use one set of technology for their in-store experience and one set of technology for their online experience, and the two don't talk to each other, or if they do, it's very it's not synchronized.
Yeah. So last point on customer experience and why it's so critical is that one thing I think it's very important that retailers acknowledge is that this transformation is happening. The leaders are already pushing down this path, but this takes two very focused, very intentional activities in order to ensure that you're going to be successful in the future customer experience. One is digitally transforming your business, and we've never seen the momentum behind digital transformation as we have since the pandemic hit us globally. But the other is the ability to, or the necessity to transform your culture to become more customer-centric. And the reason this is so important is digital transformation will enable retailers to execute their vision. You can have a great vision and execute it poorly. The cultural transformation is what will enable retailers to achieve this vision. If they've got the foundation to execute it, they've got to have the culture to achieve it.
And I'd also add, don't conversation about customer-centric culture with customer centricity or a lack of desire to please customers. I worked in the grocery business for 30 years before coming to SAP, and we spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to make our customers happy. We just didn't have any visibility to the effect we were having on their experience. So this is not about customer satisfaction. This is about adding customer, and David mentioned it earlier. It's really infusing customer data into every process, whether it's supply chain, store ops, merchandising, marketing, even accounting, having visibility to the shopper data and understanding how that your job, what you're doing, influences their experience with your company. It's not an option these days. It's an imperative.
Right. So obviously the experience is key, keeping the customer at the center of everything that we do. How does trust play into all of this? Obviously, a big part of the customer channel is this customer trust idea. Now, why is it so important from a personalized customer experience perspective, and how can retailers best establish this kind of trust with their consumers?
Well, as we mentioned, I think we're acknowledging the customer experience is the competitive landscape now. So the difference, though, is this isn't about trying to please all the males in their 50s in Dallas who like working with tools. This is about how to cater to Dave Gruehn and Randy Evins, unique needs and values and aspirations as an individual customer. So the customer trust is really a linchpin to, as we'll see, being able to get access to the types of data that you're going to need to truly create personalized types of experiences. So the key to personalization is creating a relationship with your most valuable customers. I mean, it's a daunting challenge, and you don't want to try and create personal relationships with every single customer. Some of them aren't going to be worth the investment. But to the extent that you know who your best customers are, the goal is to try and take loyal customers and turn them into customer evangelists. And so it's interesting. I mean, one of the things I love about retail is you can be an executive or work in retail, but everybody's a customer. And I think when we think about what it means to have a relationship, everybody who's ever been in a long-term relationship or been married knows that to be successful in a relationship, you've got to build these relationships that around trust and communication. Because if you get the trust established, then the communication will begin to reveal the types of data points that you can translate into invaluable information that continues to perpetuate the strength of the relationship. I mean, especially the Gen Zs today, the millennials and Gen Zs, customers have expressed a desire to build relationships with their preferred retailers. I mean, I think Accenture just did a study for RILA that revealed that customers are looking to retailers to become trusted advisors. And my personal example of that is I love Stitch Fix because I suck at buying clothes, but I like looking good at them. And Stitch Fix is my trusted advisor that has added real value to my life because they spent a lot of time getting to know me and asking me to kind of, do you like this or this? It's kind of like the Tinder of clothes, and I'm swiping left and right. And first box I got, put it on, and a woman I didn't even know, it's like, wow, you look pretty nice. And I'm like, this has not happened before in a long time. So, I mean, that's real value, right? So you look at the Gen Zs, though, in particular. In some cases, my daughter, for example, is a Gen Z, my youngest daughter. She won't shop at retailers that don't support her values, things such as sustainability and upcycling. So if we live in an environment now as an industry where customers are willing to establish relationships with retailers, and they will divulge very rich types of information that are typically very difficult to get, and we'll talk about that in a second. They'll do that, but first that relationship of trust has to be established with the retail. And so customers will do this, but there's really three levers, three conditions that have to exist in order for this relationship to begin prospering. One is transparency. They want to know what data you're collecting and what you're doing with it. And God help you if you're collecting it and selling it, because they'll sniff that out in a second. So there's transparency. Then there's control, which means they are in complete control of adding, modifying, and deleting this data at any time. And when they say delete it, it's not like I can't see it and you still have it and you're selling it. It's gone, all right? And so there's that trust thing that comes back into play. But there's also control that as a retailer, you're going to protect this very, very intimate data against things like data breaches and using it for means that weren't agreed to when the relationship was being established, the security and the privacy of that information. But most importantly, that third level is perceived value. There's been a lot of studies done that show that the customers are truly willing to share information, but they expect to get something, a return on their investment, so to speak. How does this transparency enrich their lives, add convenience, and enhance their shopping experience? I think grocers in particular have an amazing amount of potential in this area to add true value to people's lives. When you think about what you buy at a grocery store, it's kind of stunning when I sat down and made the list. I mean, just by what I'm buying, a grocer can see what my nutrition habits, my health habits, my hygiene habits, my relationships I'm in. What am I buying? Candles or diapers, my life stage, my emotions, my hobbies, how I'm entertaining, how I entertain myself, my good habits, my bad habits. If I have a trusted relationship with a grocer and I say, you know what, I aspire to lose weight, or I aspire to be healthy, or any of the things that are possible given all those combinations of things that are going on in my life, how much value could a grocer add in a trusted relationship to an individual consumer's life? The potential is just absolutely mind-blowing. Randy?
Yeah, and to further that, you think about the perception of that kind of relationship that doesn't exist today, right? The ability for that customer to provide that level of information and give you permission, you better come back with something that makes sense, right? How many times have you gotten an offer from anybody, but I'll say food retailer, you look at it, you go, this is ridiculous. This doesn't make any sense. This doesn't fit me, versus an offer that, that's going to enhance and entrench that food retailer in the mind of the consumer. These people get me. These people care about my business, and they're giving me, they're improving my life, right? They're adding value to kind of hammer home that last point. They're adding value to my life, and I'll be willing to provide even more information to get more value. There's a direct correlation with the content provided and the value delivered. And if you're not delivering the value, then they're going to find somebody else who will, and find them very, very quickly.
Yeah, customer trust is a table stakes really to begin to be able to build the types of personalized experiences that you aspire to want to have, and with a holistic view of that customer.
Right. And it makes total sense that, once you establish some trust with your customers, you'll be able to gather a little more information, that they'll be more willing to provide you with some personal data about themselves. Can you guys dive a little deeper into the types of data retailers really need and why it's a critical component of the personalized experience?
Sure. All retailers have been, collecting large amounts of information on their customers since really, we went from the keyboards or the cash registers that, had keys that you had to pound on with the hammer to the computer age. But in a nutshell, I think retailers are used to collecting and harnessing things like identity, descriptive, and behavioral data. Identity data being customer's name, contact information, demographics, links to social and media profiles. Descriptive data being a more complete picture of that customer to include things like family and marital status, career details, education and lifestyle. And then behavioral data really coming on with social media and the web encompasses the ways the customer interacts with the company, like past purchases, service tickets, and things like data collected from retail associates through clienteling apps, and then how often they open and respond to things like emails. But to truly get to the nirvana of the types of personalized experiences, aka experiences dedicated to individual valued shoppers, the keys to unlocking that data is contained in things called attitudinal and qualitative data. These data types are at the heart of what motivates each customer and include things like opinions, preferences, attitudes, and especially values. This data is really hard to get, but without it, there's no personal and personal relationship. So there's really two sources for attitudinal and qualitative data. And the first one's by far the best one, and that's the customer. I mean, if you could build a relationship based on trust that motivates a customer to share information based on perceived value, as was the case with Stitch Fix and I, the better a job they did at adding value to my life because of how they harnessed and utilized and customized the byproduct of the personal relationship we had, the more I was willing to share with them. I mean, it was like, this is awesome. And so that just continued to grow like most long-term relationships do. The other source, and this is unprecedented in history, but it's part of this, what I call the perfect storm, this explosion of emerging technologies and the digital maturation of consumers and the speed with which they assimilate emerging technologies into their lives is creating just a sea of what I call digital diamonds, which is information strewn all over the floor of the internet, left willingly by a lot of these customers as they engage in things like social communities, mobile apps, anything that quenches their desire for value and to be heard in all the numerous ways. And just think about how rapidly those sources of collecting that information, the apps and the TikToks of the world, how rapidly those are growing. And there's tons of these digital diamonds that are just lying out there. And it's so critical, I think, that retailers really begin to evaluate what's your customer data platform strategy. Because one, if you're building the trust and asking the customer for data, but then you're also able to round that information out by just going out and collecting it from this variety of digital diamond sources, you're going to be ahead of the pack. And then it's less on focusing about how you get the data and more on focusing about how you harness it.
I love the term digital diamonds, Dave. In fact, I got to admit, I plagiarize it from you every chance I get because it's such a great way to describe what we're after here. And, I've been in the grocery business for 30 years prior to SAP. And I was a part of some of the original conversations back in the day about loyalty cards. And that's kind of the first step into personalization. But we all know that those loyalty cards are not what we're talking about now.
Right.
We're talking about very specific information that, again, provides extreme value to that shopper when you show up with the right things. If you show up with what they bought yesterday, it's not what they're looking for. They're
Right.
looking for what they want to buy tomorrow. And you have to have this kind of data in hand in order to be able to make some sense out of it.
So data is the fuel that's going to be driving this personalization engine, which is going to enable retailers to effectively compete in this customer experience battlefield.
Right. I mean, the big challenge here when you're trying to create personal relationship with individual customers from a small SMB perspective is it can be a little bit overwhelming, how to turn these relationships into experiences. And it seems like, a lot of people think only the big guys can do it, the Walmarts and the Targets. But what about the SMBs? How could they make this a reality for every retailer, regardless of their size?
Well, the cool part is the customers, again, they want to establish relationships with any retailer, regardless of size, tier, segment, that can add value to their lives. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to go around for everybody. But this is really SAP's approach for bridging this gap between what we call customer freedom now and real business outcomes. I mean, we like to view our customer experience solutions as enterprise-grade solutions because unlike a lot of our competitors, we truly believe we have the ability to not just enable customer experience and make it a reality with individual customers, but as Randy pointed out earlier, to actually be able to measure the impact of that and how it's truly impacting the top or bottom line to help retailers adjust their strategies. But the number one thing I'll say as I begin to walk through our approach here is that I challenge retailers to think of customer experience not as a noun, think of it as a verb. I didn't get that lesson in college when they were talking about love and relationships. Used the word a lot as a noun. Took me a while to figure out it's about actions, not words. And as I mentioned, this isn't about just digitally transforming your business. You've got to culturally transform your business, which means you've got to put the customer at the center of everything that you do. Once you've figured that out and you've begun to build this infrastructure, we build upon the customer layer with a data layer. And this is establishing an intelligent foundation, enhancing it via customer trust, in which you aggregate the most critical customer data types. We talked about the diamonds that enable everyone in your business, everyone, to see the customer holistically in real time for who they are and how they feel when they engage with you at every touch point, every time. This layer holds the keys that unlock your opportunity to establish a real personal relationship with your most valued customers. So building upon that layer now, we have the customer insight layer, which is utilizing the insight and analysis of your intelligent foundation to convert data into powerful and relevant information. You got to convert the data into information. And this layer holds the keys that unlock your opportunity to identify those compelling and personalized customer experiences and relevant promotions that will truly differentiate your business in this new battlefield of customer experience. And then finally, we've got the customer engagement layer, which builds upon the previous layers, which is harnessing your customer insight to deliver those compelling and personalized experiences and relevant promotions that are going to strengthen the customer relationship by adding that real value to their lives, real value. You add real value to your customers' lives, you can't help but increase lifetime customer value and create customers for life. This layer holds the keys that unlock your opportunity to truly bridge this gap between customer freedom and business outcomes, to be able to reap the benefits and the ROI of your investments in customer experience so you can ultimately be a strong and profitable business.
You mentioned earlier about how does a small company entertain this in light of the investment that they see the bigger companies making. And I honestly think that smaller companies have have a chance here to really play big, because it's not really scalability here that's the issue. It's the willingness to culturally change your company, to see the shopper, react to the shopper, and ensure that the shopper has absolutely first place in all aspects of your business. And they have a better chance of doing that culturally than some of the bigger guys, because they're not dealing with the accountants. They're not dealing with the supply chain. I mean, they are, but on a scale where they can actually see value, delivering value to that shopper in the process. So it's just as pertinent. In fact, it's even more important for smaller companies today to address this need to provide trust and personalized experiences.
Yeah, and the ramifications of not really weaving this into every business strategy that you have are pretty significant. I mean, as Accenture pointed out in their study for RILA, you violate customer trust and be prepared to suffer the consequences. That's a quote. The survey revealing that 92% of respondents would change their relationship with a brand, and many of them would simply take their business elsewhere with 2 or 3 bad customer experiences. But here's what's fascinating. In a study by Stella Connect, the customer service trends for 2022, and this is fascinating. This is a UK and US study. 90% of consumers across the US and UK said that if a brand turned a poor experience into a positive one by solving their problems very quickly, they would do business with that brand. They would not only do business with that brand and feel excited about it, they would tell all their friends about it. So this is literally, I screwed up, but you know what? I was able to jump. I admitted it. I jumped on it. I fixed it. And that impresses customers. They're like, wow, you guys are paying attention. This isn't all about you. That to me is pretty compelling motivation to look further into this path.
Yep.
Well, great conversation, gentlemen. Appreciate it. We're almost out of time. If anyone has any, further questions for the panel, please feel free to reach out to them directly or through RIS. We're happy to put you in touch. Also, as we stated, this was the 3rd episode in a series that we're doing of webinars. And if you see the link on the screen there, you could go check out the previous episodes. You could rewatch this one or share with a friend, and definitely check back with us. We're going to have another episode launching next month with David and Randy again. But for now, David and Randy, do you have any last thoughts before we sign off?
No, just it's an exciting, compelling time to be in retail, and I'm excited. I love working with retailers. It's been in my DNA for most of my life, and let's go change the game together.
Yeah, I can tell you my personal experience in kind of doing things the old school way. It's incredibly, I hate to even say exciting. It's enriching to know that there exists the ability to talk directly to your shopper
and add value.
And add value and say, because it's been tough to do. I mean, like I said earlier, no one's ever saying that the customers aren't the center of the universe, but now we can actually pull that off and develop that relationship and provide value to our shoppers in ways that we never could before. Love to have some conversations that go deeper than this one.
Yeah,
absolutely. Like we said, if you have any other questions or comments, or reach out to the team. We'll put you in touch with SAP and the gentleman on this webinar. But for now, we thank everyone for joining us. Thank you, David and Randy, for speaking, and obviously thank you, SAP, for sponsoring this webinar series.
Thanks very much.
Great. Have a great day.